Hey friends, it is Lane with Tim's Nation. I'm here to talk to you a little bit about the Space Marine list I'm taking into DJ. And today's list is Librarianders. That's right, I'm taking Salamanders and the Librarius Conclave detachment. I know I've played Librarius on here a couple times. I keep trying to make it work. In this GT we played in this past weekend, I was really considering taking them. I keep trying to make it work. I think there are some good things in it. It's never quite gets there, but I'm going to play it today for fun. We're also doing Salamanders, so no Gilliman, no Tigurius, no Uriel Ventress. We're just doing Salamanders, and we'll get into the reasons why here in a minute. But a couple things we're doing. We're trying out the new drop pods. I'm going to do a separate drop pod video where I talk about the models themselves and the rules, how you plan to use them, that sort of thing. So kind of a general review of the updates to the drop pod. So I'm using those today and just kind of drop some stuff in and make it do some work. So Librarius, first of all, I guess we'll talk about Salamanders. So Salamanders, we're taking Salamanders for two characters. Adrax Agatone and of course Vulcan Histan. So I don't have the actual models, so when we get to the pictures of everything, you're going to see that these are just a couple Space Marine captains that are substituting for these guys. But I do want to give them a try and try them out. I think there's some play here. So first of all, Adrax Agatone, he has a pretty good rule. In general, he just lets his unit reroll wounds in combat. That's kind of a big deal, guys. That's pretty strong. And I apologize. Let me get out the app here to make sure I check everything right. But yeah, Adrax Agatone gives his unit full rerolls to wound in combat, which is really strong. And so I'm going to have him leading a squad of Blade Guard veterans. Now, the Blade Guard, they had a points drop a couple months ago, so it's only 160 points for a 6-man. I really like the Blade Guard. Toughness 4, 3 wounds apiece. They have 4 up invulns because they're shields. They have an interesting rule where they can either reroll 1s to hit or 1s on their invuln save. In combat, you choose at the start of the fight phase. They've got I think 4 attacks apiece, right? 4 attacks apiece at strength 5, AP 2, 2 damage. So it's a pretty good damage profile. The one thing, in my opinion, that holds them back is the strength 5. AP 2, 2 damage, good profile. I know there's a lot of damage reduction out there in the game right now that really messes with them. But in my opinion, the biggest thing that holds them back is the strength 5 on their mastercrafted power swords. But now, if you're having a detachment that gives them lance, obviously you can give them +1 to wound. If you're in regular Marines, Codex compliant Marines, they get +1 to wound into the oath target. That's neat. But we can't really get past the 5 strength, except if you're in Blood Angels and Liberator Assault Group. On the charge, they go up to strength 7, which is a pretty big breaking point for them, especially as we're looking at toughness 10, 11, 12 models, where you're going from wounding on 6s to wounding on 5s. It makes a big difference. Now, that's one of the things I like about Librarius. We have a strat that in the fight phase, I can pick one unit that's just within 18 inches of a Librarian, and I can give them +1 strength. If we're in the Biomancy discipline, we get +2 strength. So they go from strength 5 to strength 6 or strength 7, and that's hugely relevant for the Blade Guard. Now, Agatone, as I said, gives them full wound rerolls. So even if we're not going at the oath target, if we charge into, say, an Imperial or a Chaos Knight that's now toughness 11, the strength 5 going to strength 6 hits that breaking point where they go from wounding on 6s to wounding on 5s. And Agatone giving them full wound rerolls is a big deal. And plus, when we go in, they're also going to reroll their 1s to hit, even if it's not oathed. So wounding on 5s with full wound rerolls plus rerolling 1s to hit is a lot of good math, depending on the unit you're going into. Obviously, if we're going into a night when we absolutely had to kill it, pick it as the oath target, go in, we get full rerolls to hit, +1 to wound, because they're Codex compliant, meaning they're going to be wounding on 4s, and Adrax giving them full wound rerolls. Wounding on 4s with full wound rerolls is a big deal in an Imperial Knight or a Chaos Knight is going to do a lot of damage, especially because most of them don't have invulns in combat. They're still going to be saving on 5 because they're AP2, but you're going to make them take a lot of saves. Now, they're not going to ace a Knight all by themselves. They're not going to pick up all 26 wounds of those guys on average. Really hot dice, that might be the case, but can't rely on that. But if you soften up with a little bit of damage beforehand, a little bit of shooting, throw a grenade, so that sort of thing, it's actually going to make the difference. So that's why we've got Adrax Agatone in here. Also, his other ability is that any units within engagement range reduce their OC. They have the OC of any units within engagement range of them. So any kind of battle line that's OC2 is going to go down to OC1. And yeah, it's any unit. So it can even be vehicles or monsters, that sort of thing, that might have a higher OC. So that's kind of handy. And the other special rule, not really a special rule, but Adrax Agatone's melee weapon, remember he's going to be giving his unit full rerolls to wound, is the Malleus Noctum. 5 attacks, hits on 2s, strength 10, AP2, flat 3 damage. So flat 3 damage on a marine combat weapon is pretty rare. Flat 3 damage is really good these days because you have so many things that have damage reduction possibilities. And the other thing is that he is at strength 10, meaning if we use that strat to push up his strength, going from strength 10 to strength 11 means he's going to be wounding knights on 4s. If we get in the right discipline, it gets him up to strength 12, wounding knights on 3s. If it's the oath target, wounding knights on 2s with a flat 3 damage weapon. So a lot of possibility there. He also has a flamer, D6 plus 3 flamer, kind of a basic flamer, might chip a few wounds off or something. But that's the reason we've got him in here. Basically, I can take that Blade Guard vet squad with him and shoot them out there. Even though he's not a librarian, the strat that gives them the extra strength works, and his ability to reroll wounds is going to make them cook when it comes to combat. Now, moving on, the second reason we're taking Salamanders is, of course, Vulcan Histan. So, Vulcan Histan has got some hilarious rules. My dude, he also has the same kind of flamer as Adrax. It's D6 plus 3 shots, strength 6, AP1, 1 damage. Flamer that can, chip a few wounds off of some infantry. His melee weapon is not that impressive. It's just 6 attacks, strength 6, AP2, 2 damage. Just like a mastercrafted power sword, basically. It'll do a little bit of work if you bop a couple 2-wound Marines or something like that. But his abilities here, first of all, at the start of the battle, you select one objective marker on the battlefield. And while this model is within range of that objective marker, he has OC 10 on himself, leadership of 5, and he has a 4-up feel no pain. Meaning the boy becomes very thick when he stands on his most favorite objective. This is hilarious. I don't know how relevant it'll be in the game. If world leaders want to take an objective from me, they're probably going to charge on there and chop it all up. But if we get some units that are kind of whittled down and chewed down, we might actually be able to do, hold on to some objectives a little bit longer. And the fact that it's a 4-up feel no pain means he's going to have some durability. He's got a 2-up save and a 4-up invuln and 5 wounds. Add that 4-up feel no pain on there. He actually might last a little while. Also, of course, hilariously, he gives Infernus Marines OC2. Neat, as long as they're not battle shock, of course. I only got 1 squad of Infernus Marines today. They're going to be there for his benefit, or he's there for their benefit. But the real reason I'm bringing him is because he points at something that he can see. Let's see, it has to be within 24 inches and visible to him at the start of the shooting phase. He picks an enemy unit, and any Adeptus Astartes units that make a ranged attack with Torrent or Melta Rain weapons get full rerolls to wound. So today we're using Infernus Marines. We're going to throw some Infernus Marines in a drop pod. They're in Librarius, so they're going to have a Librarian attached. And the combo we have here is that the Librarian is going to give them a 4-up invuln, so they get more durable. If we are in the Pyromancy discipline, which we will probably be for the first couple turns, 2 or 3 turns, we'll probably be in Pyromancy. It gives any Librarian unit +1 AP on range attacks when they're targeting something within 12 inches. Well, the good news is Infernus Marines can only target things within 12 inches. So you should always get it whenever they can shoot. And because we're throwing them in a drop pod, we're going to throw them on the table. They should get within 12 pretty easily. So that means our Infernus Marines go from AP1 to AP2, which is kind of a big deal. They already ignore cover anyways, meaning that just makes them a lot stronger. And they're strength 5, so they're a decent break point. Even like an Armiger class or a War Dog class knight that's now T9, they're going to be wounding on 5s, and if they've got full wound rerolls, they're going to get a lot of wounds through, especially at AP2. It's going to put them on their 5-up embalm. Only 1 damage apiece, but again, 10 of them. That's an average of 35 flamer hits with full wound rerolls. Strength 5, especially if we go into an oath target, we're going to +1 to wound into that. It's going to punch up into bigger, heavier things and just shred infantry. That's the big deal. I think they're going to be really strong into both those tougher targets, like knights, but also into the elite infantry we have to deal with now, especially things that reduce damage, like Deathwing Knights, Death Shroud Knights. I'm sorry, Death Shroud Terminators and Death Guard. That sort of thing that has the ability to reduce damage. They're very strong, thick, chunky boys. But AP2 ignoring cover just puts them on their embalm. Wound rerolls means we're going to get a lot of efficiency. Even if they're higher toughness, like T7, we're going to get a lot of efficiency. And all the 1 damage hits, so you can't reduce damage. If it's 1 damage, you can't reduce it. So it's going to do a lot of work into those types of units as well. And the bonus is that after we've shot in our opponent's phase, they can also overwatch. The AP buff still applies, so there's still AP2. Obviously, Vulcan Histan's wound rerolls don't apply in the overwatch, but if something is oathed, we going after an oath target, we'll still get the +1 to wound into that as well. And again, still at AP2 ignoring cover, meaning they're a strong overwatch threat. Either way. And then, of course, in this detachment, they're having a Librarian attached to give them the embalm. But the important thing is I put the enhancement on the Librarian that will be joining the Infernus Marines, the Prescience enhancement, and basically any time anyone moves within 9 inches of them, they get a D6 counter move. It's flat 6 in one of the disciplines, but odds are that I will not be using that discipline. It's flat 6 in the Divination, which is the reroll 1s to hit and wound, which is a decent one, but I don't think I'll be using that quite as much as some of the other ones. But yeah, a D6 counter move. So someone can move if they get within 9 inches of me. I can overwatch and then do the D6 counter move to boogie away, get behind a wall or get further away to prevent a charge. And because the new drop pod rules basically disregard the base and the doors of it, you only count the actual hull, not the part that's touching the ground. It makes it easier to move around because you can actually stand on those parts of the drop pod that are on the ground. You can actually stand on those. It's easier for me to move around in position. So excited to be using that. So that's a lot to say. That's the reason we're running Salamanders. 2 models that specifically buff and benefit from the Librarian detachment. Being able to have Adrax Agatone give Blade Guard vets +1 strength added to their rerolling wounds, makes them very strong. And Vulcan Histan's ability to give them reroll wounds into a target with flamers, meaning the AP2 Infernus Marines, thanks to the Pyromancy discipline, will be able to do a lot more work than they would otherwise at only AP1. Now, that's the Salamanders. Let's review Librarius discipline a little bit, guys. Crack your books open. Let's go to the library. Let's study a little bit. These guys have been studying. So the Librarius Conclave detachment is very, very complicated. It's simple in the fact that it really only applies to librarians as far as your disciplines and your enhancements. You can only go on librarians. Some of the strats can be used on other units, which is how Adrax Agatone's Blade Guard will be benefiting from that strat. They just have to be within 18 inches of a librarian. So there are a few strats that benefit other things. But there are 5 different disciplines. And at the start of the battle round, not your turn, at the start of the battle round, you choose one of these disciplines to be active. So first we have Biomancy. This just gives any librarian or psyker Astartes units +2 movement. And when I say psyker Astartes, you can attach an Inquisitor, from Imperial Agents to battle line units. So you could use it, assault intercessors or blade guard, or not blade guard, assault intercessors or regular intercessors, or even heavy intercessors you can attach some of these units to. So Biomancy gives them +2 move. Now I have my little cheat sheet here because there are 5 different disciplines. There are 5 different stratagems plus armor of contempt. Each stratagem does something different. It has a base effect, but in certain disciplines it gets better and has an improved effect. And then there are 4 different enhancements, and again, they have a base effect, but in a specific discipline, they have a bonus effect. So I had to make this sheet to help myself keep straight in my head all the different disciplines and how they affect the stratagems and the enhancements. That's why I'm going to keep referring to this piece of paper. But so, for example, in Biomancy, if you use the stratagem Iron Arm, it just has to be within 18 inches of a psyker unit, and they get +1 strength in combat. If you're in the Biomancy discipline, they get +2 strength. Again, a huge breakpoint for certain combat attacks. And the Divination discipline is the next one. It's a solid all-around discipline, but I probably won't be using a lot. It's just reroll 1s to hit and 1s to wound. Again, this is only for librarian units or psyker attached units. And then there's a Pyromancy is the one I plan to use a lot in this game with this build. Pyromancy just gives any librarian units +1 AP into a target within 12 inches in the shooting phase and with ranged attacks. Not the shooting phase, sorry. With ranged attacks, so it still applies in Overwatch. Now, there is a stratagem called Fiery Shield. For 1 CP, you can make any unit that's within 18 inches of a psyker -1 to hit in combat. So, for example, if one of my psyker units or a non-psyker unit, infantry, of course, for example, Adrax Agatone and his blade guard buddies, if they are getting attacked, for 1 CP, I can make them -1 to hit. However, if it's in this discipline, the Pyromancy discipline, that strat also makes the opponent's combat attacks hazardous. So, which is hilarious, especially if there's a large volume of attacks, or you have a unit that has multiple attack profiles on each model. For example, like Orc Squighog Riders or Krutox Rampagers. They have anything that has the model, the rider making attacks and the beast making attacks. That's 2 hazardous rolls for each model. So yeah, making combat attacks hazardous, also being -1 to hit is pretty juicy. So we'll have some fun with that. Also, we have the Fusillade Enhancement, which gives a unit anti-vehicle, anti-monster 5-up. Of course, we're attaching this librarian that's going to have this enhancement to a squad of Stern Guard who will be in a drop pod. Of course, in the Pyromancy discipline, that also gives them sustained 1. So when they shoot at something, not only are there dev wound weapons that normally do devs on 6s, going to be doing devs on 5-ups into a vehicle or monster, and because they're Stern Guard, they're going to reroll all wounds into the oath target. They're also going to get sustained if they were in this discipline because they have that enhancement. There's a couple other disciplines. Telekinesis is -1 strength when they are attacked by ranged weapons. So anytime a ranged weapon shoots at them, the ranged weapon becomes -1 strength. Kind of neat, but I don't really plan to use that very much, especially against World Eaters. I'm more really worried about their punching. And the last one is telepathy, where we ignore weapon and ballistic skill, hit roll modifiers, that sort of thing. So really, we're looking at today Pyromancy for the shooting, and if we need to switch to combat, going to Biomancy because that gives us more movement, and Stern Guard with their full wound rerolls into the oath target, and the fact that they get +1 to wound in the oath target, and Biomancy, we can get them up to, even with their bare hands, go from strength 4 to strength 6, is going to be very relevant. Again, a squad of Stern Guard, 10-man squad of Stern Guard, not even counting the Power Fist or the Librarian's attached weapon, just their bare hands. They get 4 attacks apiece. If they're wounding on 5s with bare hands, because they get +1 to wound. So punching an Imperial Knight that's toughened with 11. Base, they would be wounding on 6s. However, because they're Space Marines in the Codex Compliant chapter, they would get +1 to wound in the oath target. So then they're wounding on 5s. However, if you give them +2 strength, and they get up to strength 6, then their bare hands would normally be wounding a T11 unit on 5s, going to 4s in Marines, and with full wound rerolls into the Oath target means they're going to do a lot of damage to an Imperial Knight, even with their little bare hands, their little Space Marine fists. So let's actually go through the list, see everything we've got today. That's kind of I've kind of given you up front all the things I plan to use, the fun I plan to have with it. A few more things to talk about here in the list, but let's get to it. So this is exactly 2,000 points of Salamander Space Marines in the Librarius Conclave detachment. For characters, as I have already discussed extensively, we have Adrax Agatone, who will be leading some Blade Guard vets, and we have Vulcan Histan. He'll be leading some company heroes just to make them a little bit more durable. Of course, we have one lieutenant with combi weapon. Got to have him in there. Just having a lone op unit that has a counter move that can go out and do actions, survive a little bit, be a little bit annoying is very important. And then we have 3 librarians. Of course, I have my Tigurius model in here. He is not being used as Tigurius. He's just being used as a regular librarian. Sorry, guys, I don't have 3 Primaris librarians yet. But one of these guys will have prescience. This is the counter move enhancement. So anytime anyone moves, or once per round, when someone moves within 9 inches of his unit, he gets a D6-inch counter move. We have another one who has Fusillade. Fusillade is the big one that gives his units ranged attacks, anti-vehicle, and anti-monster 5-up. Meaning when we put them with Stern Guard, who normally do dev wounds on 6s, they're going to be doing dev wounds on 5s. And because Stern Guard get full wound rerolls into the Oath target, meaning we're just going to fish for those dev wounds, and we will kick out a ton of damage. Even the Librarian's overcharged attack gets dev wounds, so it just pumps up the damage output that this unit's going to have. And then we just have one Librarian that's, just a guy. He's going to be joining another Stern Guard squad, so we're going to have a Stern Guard squad that doesn't have the buff up. But I love my Sternies, and they're still pretty juicy. And this detachment, so we're going to have one of those. Those are our characters. Moving on to dedicated transports, we do have an Impulsor. Impulsor will be carrying the Blade Guard vets, gives them a good way to launch out and keep them safe from getting shot or charged too early in the game. Gives them that extra move with their disembark when they come running out of there, and hopefully our boy Adrax is going to lead those Blade Guard in and do a lot of damage when they come running out of there. Now we have also in dedicated transports now, because drop pods have been updated. They're no longer just transports, they're now dedicated transports. So yes, you can take 6 of them if you want to. We do have 3 today. So I've got 2 of the new model. And as I said before, please check out, we're going to release a separate video just on the new drop pods. But we've got 2 of the new model here, not painted yet. I was pretty busy at the GT this past weekend, so I haven't gotten any paint on these guys yet. And we've got 1 of the old drop pods. Now, the old drop pod has larger doors than the new drop pod, so there is a little bit size difference. They're the same height. However, GW's new rules for the drop pod state that we don't even count the doors that are on the ground as part of the model. For purposes of movement, engagement, models can stand on those doors, and enemy models can just move over those doors. It doesn't count as part of the model anymore. So meaning if the door sizes are different, that's fine. Other than that, the hull size is the same, so you should be able to still use your old drop pods. You should have the doors down. Well, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter because the doors aren't part of it. So you can still use your old drop pods if the doors are down or up, because really we're only counting the body of the model. For competitive play, you might want to check with a TO if you're going to a tournament, whether they allow you to use the old models rather than the new ones, because they do have a different base size, even though we're supposed to ignore the bases. But I think for casual play, you're pretty safe still using the old drop pods. Now, they no longer have a gun, no shooting. They're OC0, so they don't do anything like that. But they do carry, now with a transport capacity of 12 Marines. There are a few restrictions here. They can't carry... Someone immediately asked if they can carry Wolfen. No, they can't take the Wolfen. Any Adeptus Astartes infantry models that cannot transport Centurions, which would be hilarious. Gravis or Jump Pack, Wolfen or Terminator models. So just regular guys, either Primaris or Tacticus armor. Transport capacity of 12. It deep strikes. The models get out when it deep strikes. The models still have to be the disembark still have to be 9 inches away, but you are able to bring things in on turn 1. They do have a special rule in here now that on the turn they come in, you can deep strike, they disembark, but they can still charge. And there's no longer, there used to be something that said you ignore the limits on what you put into deep strike when you use drop pods. That's no longer the case, so that rule is not there anymore. So they do count towards your 1,000 points that you can have in deep strike. So 3 drop pods. We're putting in an Infernus squad and 2 Stern Guard. This is probably too many drop pods, to be honest, because they're 70 points apiece for things that don't shoot and don't have OC. That's 210 points in my army with no damage output, no movement, no OC. But yeah, neat. But we're going to use them today. We're going to give them a try, see how they perform for us. Moving on. We do have 1 5-mana jump pack intercessors just to go out and score some points, take care of, try and clear some little screening units, that sort of thing. We've got drop pods, so we want to be able to clear screening units that are going to prevent me from dropping in where I want to go. So we do have a 5-mana jump pack intercessors. They move 12 inches. They got some pistols. They got a bunch of chainsword attacks. They do impact mortals when they charge. You guys know how good they are. Just because of points, I couldn't have 2 of those squads, so I have a squad of Outriders in here as well. 3 Outrider bikes. On the charge, they get +1 strength and +1 damage. So they are 2 damage chainswords on the charge, which is kind of nice. Can do some work there as well. Moving on, we do have 1 6-man of Blade Guard veterans. I love the Blade Guard vets. As I said, in this detachment, we have a strat where whenever they're within 18 inches of a psyker, I can give them +1 strength or +2 if we're in the Biomancy discipline. As it is, these guys punch pretty well at kind of that medium strength. They each get 4 attacks, hitting on 3s, strength 5, AP2, 2 damage. They do have 4 up invulns because they're storm shields. Their special rule is that at the start of the fight phase, you choose to either reroll hit rolls of 1 or invuln saves of 1. So they can either go kind of defensive or offensive. If they're going into the oath target, you can just reroll those invuln saves. If you want to do more damage and they're not going into the oath target, then go ahead and reroll those 1s to hit. So pretty good deal at 160 points because they can put out a lot of damage in the right detachment. We do have a squad of company heroes. Company heroes have just kind of 4 different models. They're toughness 4 with 4 wounds, but they're always neg1 to wound. It's kind of a neat neg1 to wound rule because it does not say if the strength is higher than them. So strength 4, strength 3 is still neg1 to wound into these guys, even if it's lower strength or equal strength. So it gives them a durability, especially because they're 4 wounds apiece. They do have a company hero in there who has some pretty good number of attacks. There's a funny flat 3 damage heavy bolter in there as well. So, but really they're just there to keep Vulcan Histan alive so he can go out and point at something and give his flamer buddies full wound rerolls. Moving on, we do have an Infernus squad. So Infernus Marines, their attack, I think in the last, not the most recent balance update, but the one before that, they gave them a little bit of AP because they were AP 0. So the ranged weapons, their pyroblasters, are strength 5, AP 1, 1 damage. They're D6 attacks. They ignore cover and they're torn. As I said, when we are in the pyromancy discipline with the librarian attached to them, they will go to AP 2 is where they start to get really juicy. AP 2 ignoring cover. If they shoot something, in the shooting phase, unfortunately not in the Overwatch. It would be hilarious if it procced in the Overwatch. But in the shooting phase, when they shoot something, that target, if it survives, has to take a battle shock test at neg1 because they don't like being on fire. Moving on, we do have a Vindicator. Vindicators do Vindicator things. It shoots real hard. It's D6 plus 3 shots when it shoots. Only 24-inch range, so you do have to get a little bit close. But it's strength 14, AP 3, D6 damage. Obviously, when we're in a Codex compliant Marine chapter, it gets +1 to wound in the oath target, meaning it's wounding pretty much everything on 2s, unless it has a negative wound modifier. Its special rule, of course, is that it does not care if you tag it in combat. So even if it's tagged in combat with an engagement range and it's firing with the big guns never tie rules, it does not take a penalty hit. And it can still shoot its blast weapon into combat, which is awesome. Just gives him that extra durability and extra functionality, even if he's been tagged by some smaller units. And then finally, 2 10-mans of my beloved Stern Guard. So the Stern Guard, I love the Stern Guard. I have 30 of them. We're only running 20 today, merely 20, because we decided to give some Infernus Marines a shot. But the Stern Guard, I'm taking the bolters first of all, that are just the Stern Guard bolters, not the combi weapons, just because I want more shots. And with the enhancement, of course, that gives them a 5-up dev into monsters and vehicles. We definitely want to have the higher volume of shots. Now, Each one has a bolter, a stern guard bolter that does 2 shots, but rapid fire 1. So that when they're within 12 inches, they get 3 shots. They're AP 1, strength 4, and they have dev wounds. Now, of course, in this discipline, we will be giving if they're in the pyromancy discipline, if they're shooting something within 12, not only do they get rapid fire, they get +1 AP. So it'll be an AP 2, which is very significant when we're shooting at things that we want to kill. And in addition to that, when they go into there's of course 2 heavy bolters in here as well. For every 5 men, there is a heavy bolter. The heavy bolter also gets dev wounds, so it's a 2 damage heavy bolter that gets dev wounds, especially in that one that has the enhancement where they're going to be deving on 5s. It's going to definitely produce some damage there. Now in combat, they're actually strong too because they are 4 attacks apiece. The sergeant has a power fist that's also 4 attacks and still hits on 3s. And of course, again, when they go into the oath target, they'll get +1 to wound because of Marine rules. They'll get full wound rerolls. And in this discipline, we are in the this detachment. We can give them +1 strength with a strat, and if they're in the biomancy discipline, we give them +2 strength with strat. And they can really punch up into heavier targets when they're getting at strength 6. With +1 to wound and full wound rerolls, they'll get some damage through. Into basically anything that's not a 2-up armor save. That's it. That's the list. That's all the good stuff, guys. I think it'll be fun. I like the way the Librarius interacts with a couple of Salamander characters, of course. I'd like it more if we had Gilman in here to give me 2 oath targets. But no, this will definitely work because especially if Vulcan Histan points at something, the Infernus Marines will get wound rerolls into that. When Adrax Agatone leads the Blade Guard and they go into a target, they can reroll 1s to hit natively. They can get +1 strength or +2 strength, depending on the discipline, and he gives them full wound rerolls. So those 2 units can go into kind of medium toughness units. And not need the oath target, not need to be the oath target. And then finally, our stern guard will go into the oath target, especially when we're going after monsters and vehicles, because the dev wounds should just shred one of those units. First, we're going to try out the drop pods today, see how much of a liability they are with World Eaters coming at us, charging at us. Maybe we can block some charges, but a lot of times we can't shoot. Sometimes combat units will tie up a drop pod, not kill it in their turn, so that in my turn I can't shoot them because they're engaged with a friendly unit. That rule should not apply to drop pods because they're completely disposable. I don't see my Marines would not want to just shoot things in engagement range with the drop pods. They're not worried about the drop pods. There's nobody inside. I mean, maybe there's like the Imperium has a very strict recycling program on drop pods. I don't know. Maybe they paid a deposit on it and they got to take it back. I don't know what the rules are for drop pods, but yeah, we'll see how much of a liability they are today. So follow me over to the battle report and let's check them out.